What's up guys, this is Byrne Performance. And today we're working on a CVT transmission on a 2015 WRX. So what we gotta do is we gotta take the intercooler off, gotta take the wheels off, axles have to come out, driveline has to come off, and we're gonna see if this one has a filter in it. So if it does, then we'll replace that while we're putting the new transmission in. This is a new used transmission, and it does have a 6-month warranty on it, so we want to be sure that we are doing everything right by the book before we put this transmission in and send it. So when I work on a Subaru, what I like to do is I like to start up top first. We're going to take our wheels off and then we're going to get under the car. So everything up here I try to get done, like bell housing, bolts, clutch slave. This is an EJ, so I don't think we have to worry about that. The intercooler off, basically get everything out of our way, and then we'll lift it up, get our wheels off, get our axles out, and then we'll start underneath with taking the driveline out, unbolting the transmission, unbolting the brackets that hold the transmission in. It'll be good to come out.
Okay, so first we gotta get this intercooler off so we can get plenty of access to the top of the transmission over here. Wiring plugs undone, and we can get the starter really easy.
So we got our intercooler off. Now we're going to be working on a couple of things right here. Our pitch mount, our starter, any plugs that might go to the transmission right here. And this has an oil cooler because it's a CVT transmission. So on manual transmissions you don't have to worry about this because they don't have an oil cooler. But this one's CVT, it's going to have a cooler. We're going to have to disconnect these two lines, unmount this cooler, and we're just going to leave it in the engine bay when we go to pull it. So when taking the axles out, a lot of these Subarus are going to have a camber bolt right here. So it's very important to mark this guy and where it's at so you won't mess up your suspension specs. So what we've done so far is we've taken out the axles, we've taken off our driveline and our shield that goes above the exhaust. Now we got the shift cable off. Got to do so we got to get the torque converter bolts off the torque converter, so that way the torque converter doesn't stay with the engine. We want the torque converter to come with the transmission. So where you're going to find your torque converter bolts, there is a little rubber shield that sits on every EJ block right here. Just pull that out and then you have access to your torque converter bolts. When removing torque converter bolts, you're gonna have to move the crank. It's 22 millimeter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna spin it until we can see our bolt is exposed. Ay, ay, ay. So we got the transmission out. It's quite a bit bulkier than manual transmissions, it being a CVT and all. Most of you are probably going to be doing this on the ground. You know, not a whole lot of you guys have access to a lift or the tools that I have. There are options as far as buying transmission jacks from Harbor Freight, just having a couple of jacks hands on hand and a friend with you. That way you don't end up crushing yourself under this transmission. We're going to throw the new one in and make sure it doesn't have a filter. We'll reverse our process of taking it out. So we got our new transmission here. Before we want to put it in, we want to make sure that this is seated completely. And it's going to be different per vehicle. This one I'm pretty sure is seated. And then before you go in, if you have a used transmission, make sure there's two dowels that sit right here and right here. Make sure you have both of them either in the transmission or the engine. Sometimes the transmission will pull them and you won't have any dowels on the engine or the new one. Or it'll be the other way around where your new transmission has the two dowels and there's two dowels in the block. If that's the case, it's not going to go on. You're going to have a fun time trying to get it while the transmission's up there. So just make sure to be wary of your dowels. I'm missing one on this side, so I'm going to steal it from that transmission and put it in the block. And when I put them in, I like to grease them just in case this transmission has to come out for any other reason. These are going to fall out nice and easy. Because you usually have problems with maybe a transmission hasn't been demounted before. Luckily, somebody put a new engine in this, so they were relatively easy to take out. But if you have something that hasn't been demounted, like whether it be the engine or transmission, it's going to be a little tough, and you're going to have to finagle it with either a pry bar, or what I like to do is I like to take a small fine edge flathead up top and just hammer in between those two edges to separate the transmission from the engine. I'm greasing this guy up. It's gonna create a good seal on the output shaft seal. It's less friction between the seal and the shaft. So I like to do this to axles, drive lines, anything that has a seal between whatever we're working with. Cam gears, crank seals. So that way there's less friction when it's spinning in there and it creates a good seal. We don't like dry seals. We like lube seals. Yeah. Yo. Let's go see what Blake's up to. Where are we at, Blake? What are we doing?
We're putting on this ZZP Performance intercooler piping and intercooler kit. We got a 4-inch intercooler over there, replacing our stock 1 1/4 inch cord.
What are we working on? What is it?
This is a 2016 Cadillac ATS. I guess this kit fits for ATS, Malibu, Ecotech 2 liters. Yeah, we're just putting on some other minor bolt-ons. We got like a wastegate, solenoid that we're gonna put on.
Now we gotta put our tires on. Yeet. Oh, no. Get that. There we go. Putting the starter back in, and we're gonna button up here. We got the wheels on, suspension's all tight, everything underneath is tight. So really, we're on the home stretch right now. We got some bell housing bolts left. We got oil cooler lines, some plugs, ground strap, and bolt up the oil cooler. And then we gotta check our trans fluid. So when I'm working with an automatic transmission, when I'm bolting up my bell housing bolts, if it's a bolt, not a stud, what I like to do is I like to keep all my bolts loose, but make them hand tight and go around and put them in, all of them, before I tighten them down, because sometimes you'll tighten 3 of them down and then the 4th one you go to put in, you can't line up. So just a tech tip for the day. So I'm putting the mounting bracket on for the oil cooler, the trans. This is what keeps the oil cooler in place. Needs to be removed so you can get to one of the bell housing bolts. So this is one of the, maybe the second to last step, or the third to last step. Then we'll be able to check the transmission fluid and start her up. Now I'm putting the intercooler back on. She's a bit tight. So now we're just checking the transmission fluid. We're gonna check the diff fluid. We're done installing our transmission. We're gonna run it through the gears after we get it started, after we check our fluids. And then we're gonna turn it off, check our fluids again, make sure they're topped off, and then this beast should be good to go.